All right, guys, here we are again. It's time for our study in Ephesians. We're going through these books that Paul wrote while he was under house arrest, and we feel like we're kind of under house arrest. So we're going to read this and kind of see what's on Paul's mind while he's stuck. And we're in Ephesians chapter 2 today, and we're just going to read a couple of short verses. They're a pretty popular set of verses. Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 through 10. Let's go ahead and read that.
For by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing. It is the gift of God, not a result of works, so that one may boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand, that we should walk in them.
So in this series, we have talked a lot about how we are responding to this crisis, how we can continue to show people love and continue to reach out and build each other up. And Philippians had a lot to say about faith and how our faith is lived out in the works that we do. And this verse is a little bit different. It talks about grace. It says, "For by grace you have been saved through faith." Now in Philippians, it talks a lot about faith and how we have this kind of, how we've been redeemed through faith and these kind of things. And it talks, faith is more about how we're brought into line with Christ, what our life, how our life has changed because of our salvation. Faith is how we live out our lives because of what Christ has done. Grace is a little bit different. Grace is actually what saved us, what saves us. And he goes on and he says, this is not your doing. It is the gift of God, not a result of works, so that no one may boast. So he's saying, we don't earn our salvation. There's nothing that we can do to be good enough. We're always going to have a debt that needed to be paid. And so God, because he loves us and through grace, saves us. It's a gift. It's from him given to us. And what happens is that changes us. When we have this realization of what God has done through us, through his grace, we live out our faith. And we have been saved by grace. We have been saved through faith. And so we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. And all this talk about doing for others and building each other up and continuing to focus on Christ and live our lives a certain way because of him, we can't lose sight of, none of that is what saves us. None of that makes us good enough. We get the cart ahead of the horse sometimes. What we have to do, what we have to realize is when we realize what God has done for us, our life is drastically changed because of that. Our faith in that changes the way we live, changes the way we act, and changes us completely. There's a story in the Bible, Luke chapter 7, I think it is, where this woman, she comes in and she starts washing Jesus' feet. And one of the Pharisees is there, and he gets all hot and bothered, and he's like, if this man was a prophet, he would know who this woman was and that she was sinful. And Jesus goes into the story, and he tells him, he says, if there were two people who owed someone a lot of money, one of them owed, a certain amount of money, but the other one owed even more. And he just looked at both of them and forgave both of them. Which one of them would love him more? And the answer, of course, is the one who was forgiven more would love God more. And that's kind of an illustration of how our being saved by grace makes us live out our faith. And so it changes us, that realization that we've all been forgiven a debt, no matter how bad of a sinner we are or how good of a person we try to be, we all have a debt that had to be paid by Christ. And it's his grace that saves us. And it's his grace that changes our lives and lets us live out our faith into the world and show people who Christ is. All right, guys. See you tomorrow.